Hello viewers, in today's class we are going to solve yet another problem from definite integrals, right? And here we have to integrate a function which is a combination of a signum function and greatest integer function, right? So let us start. Now here we have to evaluate this function from -1 to 1, and here we have our integrand as signum of x and greatest integer x minus 1, right? So viewers, here what we will do, we have to make use of the definition of signum function, and then we'll apply the definition of greatest integer function, right? So let us start. So let us first call this integral as I, right? Now let us first take this signum function. Now we know that signum of x is equal to plus 1 whenever this x is greater than 0, right? And signum of x is equal to 0 whenever x is equal to 0, and signum of x is equal to -1 whenever x is less than 0, right? So this is the definition of signum function, right? So signum of x will take plus 1 value whenever x is a positive number, and signum of x is always equal to 0 whenever x is equal to 0, and signum of x will take the value -1 whenever x is a negative quantity, right? And this is the definition of signum function, right? So now here we see that the limits of integration varies from -1 to 1, right? So here we have -1, and here we have 1, and between -1 and 1 we have 0, right? So 0 lies between -1 and 1, and when we take the interval from -1 to 0, then we see that all the values are less than 0, right? And when we take the values of x which are greater than 0, then we have to take this interval from 0 to 1. So here x is greater than 0, right? So when x belongs to this interval from -1 to 0, then x is less than 0, and when x belongs to 0 to 1, then x is greater than 0, right? So we have to break our integral at this point, that is at x equal to 0, right? So now this integral I can be written as a sum of two integrals, that is I1 and I2, right? So I1 is from -1 to 0, right? From -1 to 0, and I2 is from 0 to 1. 0 to 1, and our integrand is the signum of x greatest integer x minus 1 dx, and here we have signum of x and greatest integer x minus 1 and dx, right? Now we have to solve these two integrals, and here we see that x varies from -1 to 0, and when x varies from -1 to 0, all the values of x are less than 0. Therefore this signum of x will take the value -1, and here when x varies from 0 to 1, then all the values of x are obviously greater than 0. So this value this signum x will take the value +1, right? So now these two integrals can be written as -1 to 0. Here we have -1 and greatest integer x minus 1 dx, and here we have 0 to 1, and here we have plus 1 and greatest integer x minus 1 and dx, right? So now these two integrals can further be written as minus 1 to 0. We can take this negative sign outside the integral, and here we have greatest integer x minus 1 dx, and here we have 0 to 1 and greatest integer x minus 1 dx, right? So now viewers, here we see that we have two integrals, and now our integrand is a greatest integer function, right? In this integral and in this integral also we have the integrand a greatest integer function, right? So let us first take this one, and here we see that when x varies from minus 1 to 0, see here when x varies from minus 1 to 0, then we have to see the value of this greatest integer function, right? So here we have x, it lies between minus 1 to 0, and if we subtract 1 throughout, then we have minus 1 minus 1, here we have x minus 1, and here we have 0 minus 1, right? So here we have minus 2, and here we have x minus 1, and here we have minus 1. So we have arrived at this inequality, right? So let us see what we have discussed. See here x varies from minus 1 to 0, minus 1 to 0, and now we'll see the interval in which x minus 1 varies, right? So what we will do, we'll subtract 1 throughout this inequality. So we have minus 1, here x minus 1, here we have 0 minus 1, so we have minus 2, x minus 1 and minus 1, right? So now we see that x minus 1, it lies between minus 2 and minus 1. So therefore what will happen, the value of greatest integer x minus 1 is equal to minus 2, right? This is due to the definition of greatest integer function, right? So here the value of greatest integer x minus 1 is minus 2 whenever x minus 1 lies between minus 2 and minus 1. For example, if we take here x minus 1 as minus 1.5, right? Because minus 1.5, it lies between minus 2 and minus 1, so therefore the value of greatest integer minus 1.5 is equal to minus 2, right? Okay, now let us come to this one. So here we see that x varies from 0 to 1, right? Now let us follow the same steps. Now subtracting 1 throughout, we have 0 minus 1, here we have x minus 1, here we have 1 minus 1. So this is minus 1, this is x minus 1, and here we have 0, right? So when x lies between 0 and 1, then x minus 1 lies between minus 1 and 0. So therefore the value of greatest integer x minus 1 is minus 1, right? Because if we take x minus 1 as see here x minus 1 lies between minus 1 and 0, so let us take minus 0.5, right? So the value of greatest integer minus 0.5 is minus 1, right? So now we will utilize this inequality, and this inequality to assign a value to this function greatest integer x minus 1. So here when x varies from minus 1 to 0, then the value of greatest integer x minus 1 is minus 2. So here we will take minus 2, and when x varies from 0 to 1, then x minus 1 varies from minus 1 to 0, so the value of greatest integer x minus 1 is minus 1, right? So now our these two integrals reduces to, so we can now write minus, and here we have minus 1 to 0, and we have minus 2 dx, and here we have 0 to 1, and we have minus 1 dx, right? So now we have two simple integrals, and this minus becomes plus, so we have 2 here, and minus 1 to 0 dx, and here we have minus 0 to 1 dx, right? Now the integral of dx is x, so we have 2, and here we have x minus 1 to 0, and here we have x 0 to 1, and now we can simply substitute the limits and we'll take the difference. So we have 0 minus minus 1, and here we have 1 minus 0, right? So this is 2, and this is 0 plus 1, and this is 1 minus 0 is 1, this is 2 times 1 is 2, 2 minus 1, that is 1, right? So viewers, the value of this integral, that is minus 1 to 1 signum of x greatest integer x minus 1, is equal to 1, right? And this is how we solve this problem.